What does it actually mean to have your life together? Is it about paying your bills on time, feeling productive, or maybe it's just keeping your plants alive? The truth is somewhere in between. Being well adjusted isn't just about having a perfect life. It's about developing a variety of traits and behaviors that demonstrates emotional maturity, adaptability, and even a little self-confidence to be uniquely you. In this video, I'll share the science-backed strategies that you are on track and a few tips to strengthen those traits even more. I'm Dr. Jamie, licensed clinical psychologist obsessed with helping myself and others live a productive life without sacrificing your mental health. Let's figure out if you're well adjusted. Let's start with the big daddy, the big granddaddy, the big one. The first sign you're a well-adjusted adult is your ability to regulate your emotions. If you've ever seen a kid throw a fit because they got the grape popsicle instead of the blue raspberry popsicle, you'll know that we're not born with the ability to regulate our emotions. Since the beginning of psychotherapy over 100 years ago, our old buddy Sigmund Freud was talking about the primal part of the psyche he called the id, which is the impulse, desires, and emotions part of our brain, which doesn't necessarily have a regard for logic, reason, or social norms. And parts of these ideas remain in modern therapies such as dialectical behavioral therapy and acceptance and commitment-based therapies. And that's no coincidence. Emotion regulation is related to better overall mental health, physical health, social relationships, cognitive performance, productivity, and even overall life satisfaction. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal. I'm regulating my emotions right now as the sun continues to go in and out of the clouds. People that are good at regulating their emotions generally have these three traits. First, they're good at recognizing and labeling their emotions. For example, I struggled for years with my lack of desire to build close interpersonal relationships and a hyperfixation on achieving academic success. But even though I was successful at avoiding people and getting through rigorous academic programs, I always had this uneasy feeling of anxiety, or at the very least, a negatively valenced emotion. That just means it felt bad. So I learned to use a tool that I now use with my clients on a fairly regular basis. You might be familiar with this wheel of emotion, and you can find a variety of versions of this by simply Googling wheel of emotion. If you're experiencing an emotion, you can start at the center with these broad emotional categories, and the categories get more specific as you get further and further out on the circle. Sometimes I just start with one side of the circle. I know this is a positive emotion or a negative emotion. And then I start to drill down to try to identify the specific emotion that I'm experiencing. Since there's so many different wheels of emotion, I'm going to leave a link to some of my favorites down below. Once you've identified an emotion, people that are particularly good at regulating those emotions are able to take a beat, which inserts some space between their emotional experience and their external behaviors. I'll be the first one to tell you that your feelings are valid and your feelings are real. And there's not too much that you can do in the short term about those immediate emotions or automatic thoughts that pop up in a situation. But you do have 100% control on how you behave following those emotions or following that automatic thought. People who are well regulated can acknowledge the emotion and take a moment before deciding how they're going to behave as a result of the situation. So if you're able to respond to your emotions without letting your emotions being the sole driver of your behavior, you're a pretty well-adjusted adult. One last thing about regulating your emotions, and that's the regulation part. Well-adjusted people are able to have the appropriate amount of bounce back, meaning that they can return to their usual baseline emotion more quickly than others. So if you get the wrong order at Starbucks and it ruins the rest of your Tuesday, here are a few ways that you can build that adaptability. Consider doing a mini reset of your day. I like to do a 2-minute dance party. Just turn on some music on your car or on your headphones and rock out to get myself out of a funk. Or if you're feeling a little bit more cerebral, whenever I have a problem that happens more than once, I try to take that opportunity as a learning experience and understand what kind of systems or safeguards I might need to put in place to stop the same mistake from happening over and over again. This becomes part of my life rules or personal policies, And if you're interested in a whole video on how to establish your own rules for life or your personal policies list, leave a thumbs up emoji in the comment section down below. While we're on the subject of personal policies, people that are well adjusted have personal boundaries. Personal boundaries demonstrate a deep understanding of yourself. That includes your own needs, wants, and limitations. Well-developed boundaries also understand your environment and those around you. This is because good boundaries show that a person is able to prioritize their well-being as well as find points of compromise to accommodate the needs of others. So it ends up being a nice mix of filling your cup and giving to other people. Personal boundaries could also be helpful in a variety of circumstances. At work, boundaries can help you avoid overcommitment and can serve to limit toxic interactions, even those that you're forced to be in for a paycheck. In your personal life, boundaries could help you communicate clear expectations and reduce misunderstandings. Finally, boundaries are a way of showing yourself some respect, showing that you have an understanding that we're limited on our time, energy, and resources just by being human. I did an entire video on boundaries in under 7 minutes, and I'll leave that linked in the cards up above. People who are well-adjusted know what they're good at, and they know what they're bad at. This self-awareness of your strengths and weaknesses creates a foundation for personal growth and sustained motivation. When you know what you're good at, you start to develop a general sense of self-efficacy. That's the belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations. In psychology, this belief in yourself is known to fuel motivation. Why? Because when you tackle things that you know you're capable of, you start to create a feedback loop of success. So rather than motivation fueling action, taking action and being successful, even small successes in a specific area, actually fuels your motivation to keep going. This concept was thoroughly explored in Jeff Hayden's book, The Motivation Myth, and I highly recommend it. Each success reinforces your confidence, which makes you more willing to try new things and take on more risks in the future. For example, if you're good at public speaking, successfully delivering a presentation boosts your beliefs in your speaking abilities. That success motivates you to refine your skills even further, creating a cycle of continuous improvement and continuous progress. Now, this feedback loop doesn't just inspire motivation, it also sets the stage for consistent success. By doing more of what you do best, it maximizes the impact that you have in that area. You start to build momentum and start to build a reputation for competence. Well-adjusted people lean into that cycle, which can increase their sense of purpose and achievement. Now, equally important is understanding your limitations. Well-adjusted people aren't defined by their limitations. Instead, they adapt what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. That's the belief that abilities and intelligence are developed through effort, learning, and persistence. Well-adjusted people acknowledge their weaknesses not as a defect, but as an opportunity to learn, grow a new skill, or develop a new competence. It's just their starting point, not their end point. This combination of knowing what you're good at and knowing what you're not great at is key to being well-adjusted. The combination creates a powerful framework for success. The self-efficacy ensures that you capitalize on your strengths, continue to build confidence, and you start creating new opportunities for places where you can utilize those strengths. While the growth mindset keeps you grounded and ensures that you remain self-aware and open to continual improvement. Knowing your values is a sign that you are a well-adjusted person. Values are highly personalized and totally up to you. They're sometimes described as your personal compass because knowing your values and committing to acting consistent with your values helps to simplify decision-making. People that are well-adjusted aren't overwhelmed by simple decisions. They simply align their choices with the things that matter most to them. And we know through the psychological literature that living a life consistent with your values increases your happiness and life satisfaction. It also helps you move through the world more authentically if you're actually doing things that are consistent with what matters to you. When you don't know what you value or you're not acting consistent with your values, we get that yucky feeling psychologists call cognitive dissonance, where we know that our behaviors are inconsistent with our belief system, and it kind of makes us uncomfortable. That's something well-adjusted people aren't dealing with on an everyday basis. The easiest way to start to understand your own personal values is to utilize a values list widely found on the internet. I also happen to have a link down below where you can download my step-by-step process on how to identify your values. And I also have 2 videos on the subject. I'll leave those down in the description box as well. But you can utilize these lists to try to identify the top 4 or 5 values that resonate with you the most. Other quick exercises that you can do to identify your own values are to think about times in your life where you've been the most proud of yourself and try to see if there are any patterns or themes that come up in those moments in your life. Finally, you can look at the people that you admire the most and see if you're identifying any patterns or trends in the word list that you first identified, moments where you are most proud of yourself, and the things that you like the most in others. One of my favorite traits of well-adjusted people is their ability to understand what they can control and what they can't. Psychologists call this the locus of control, which is the belief that your life circumstances are shaped by a combination of internal factors like your actions and decisions, as well as external factors, things like luck and environment. Well-adjusted people are able to strike a healthy balance between understanding what they can control and making peace with what they can't. I often see this in my work with high performers. At work, when a project doesn't go as planned, instead of spiraling into self-blame or venting frustration at their team, they take a step back and reflect on 2 things. First, what is within my control and how can I work to improve that in the future? Second, what external factors like shifting expectations, limited resources, or unexpected delays contributed to this shortcoming? Understanding both of those things helps you to rebound in that moment and also helps you to develop the systems to maximize the chance of improvement moving forward. This trait isn't just helpful in the workplace, I find it particularly helpful in my everyday life when I'm planning out my weekly schedule. When I'm doing my weekly time blocking, I always start out by putting in things that are beyond my control. That's things like company meetings, school pickups, or other fixed points in my life that I can't really move around. From there, I plug in things that are related to my monthly, quarterly, or annual goals, as well as things to ensure that I'm living consistent with my value system. But I know that my flexibility comes from these areas. There are going to be times when I have to pick up my kid early from school, or when a meeting runs long and I won't be able to get in my lunchtime gym session. This balanced perspective is empowering because it promotes action where it's needed while fostering peace when action isn't possible. I would much rather spend my time asking myself, what can I do to best prepare for this exam, rather than spending my time stressing over not knowing how hard the exam questions are going to be. Understanding this interplay between what's in my control and what's not in my control is a hallmark of emotional maturity and contributes to a more fulfilling and less stressful life. Well-adjusted people feel joy. Have you ever met someone that can find the downside in anything? They win the lottery and they're upset that they're going to have to pay taxes on it. They're on vacation and they won't stop complaining about the delayed flight. Well, well-adjusted people take the W. Sometimes things are just going well and it's okay to acknowledge that. The ability to embrace and appreciate positive emotions is something known in the psychological literature as the savoring effect. Savoring is the practice of intentionally focusing on the joy or pleasure in the moment. Whether it's soaking in a beautiful sunset, celebrating a personal success, or simply enjoying a great cup of coffee. Research shows that people who savor positive experiences not only feel happier in the moment, but they're also more likely to experience long-term satisfaction and resiliency. It's about pausing and letting the good sink in rather than rushing through it. If you want to learn more about the savoring effect, check out this video right here, or check out this video that YouTube thinks you'll like.